Okay, we might kick in. Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming along. My name is Ant McKenna. I'm from the Australian Live Music Business Council. I grew up on Wiradjuri country in eastern Victoria, live on Cubby Cubby country on the Sunshine Coast, and I'm joining you today from Turrbal and Yuggera country in Meanjin, Brisbane, Queensland. And thank you so much for coming along to this session. This is all about futures of ticketing, part of a whole series of sessions that the ALMBC is doing. We've been holding in-person sessions all across regional Australia. In the last few weeks alone, we've been to regional WA, regional Victoria, regional New South Wales, and I'm catching a flight later to Townsville to run a session there. We've got some great people joining us today. So Ellie, Rennie, professor at RMIT University, who studies how people coordinate using digital systems, including blockchains, and her research focuses on governance, shared knowledge, and decentralised infrastructure. She's an associate investigator at the ARC Centre of Excellence for Automated Decision-Making and Society. Ben Green is a lecturer in the music industry at RMIT School of Media and Communication, a leading researcher of Australia's live music sector with projects including ARC-funded research as well as partnerships with the AFA, APRA AMCOS, Green Music Australia, Live Music Office and lots more. He's also a regular contributor to the conversation among other national publications. And Seth, Clancy, respected leader in the entertainment industry with over 30 years of experience spanning Australia and the UK, commercial director of Oztix, Australia's largest independent ticketing company. He oversees a national portfolio of ticketing revenue and strategic partnerships, founding member of the Oztix executive team. He's also instrumental in driving the company's growth, and he's also very well known for his collaborative win-win approach. And has built enduring relationships across the live industry, live entertainment ecosystem, making him a trusted voice in the future of ticketing. We did have Gemma Pollard from Tixel coming along, but unfortunately she couldn't be here. We tried to replace her at the last minute, but we haven't been able to do that. But thank you so much to our esteemed speakers for joining us here today. Thank you all for coming along as well. We'll finish right on or before 1 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat and we'll get to them as soon as we can. There are one or two people I might call on throughout to turn the cameras on and make a comment or to ask a question as well. So if I do that, I'll do that in the chat quietly, and feel free to say no if you'd rather just sit in the background as well. Rightio. I hope the noise in my background isn't too much. I'll mute my mic as well. We might just kick in. I guess what we'll do is we'll start with the current state of play, looking at all of those bigger cultural shifts around ticketing and around ticket buying and the cultures of young people attending festivals and venues, etc. Who's selling tickets? What are the rules? Who owns what? What is dynamic or surge pricing, and what's scalping? What's the impact they're having on the industry? Then looking at ticketing transparency around what are the fees that are being charged, and then jumping into new technologies and what's here right now and what's over the horizon, and then maybe getting to new ideas such as the arena ticket levy we can talk about. We might start, I was going to start with Gemma around the Tixel's State of Play report from last year. So I might just mention a few of those points and then throw to you, Seth, to have a bit of a comment. So from the ticketing State of Play report in 2024, at the end of last year, 63% of respondents preferred single genre focused lineups over multi-genres. If an artist were trending on social media, such as TikTok, more people would buy tickets, resulting in live event success. So that impact of social media. More than half of those aged 18 to 24 reported buying tickets to see an artist they discovered through TikTok or Instagram Reels. 75% of ticket goers said that confidence in their ability to resell a ticket easily helped them decide to purchase earlier. Strong on-sale performance was also consistently cited as important for the nation's promoters. And the type of event, people preferred concerts over festivals and were prepared to spend $161 for a show by an international act. Did you have any comment about any of that, Seth, or any further comments from your engagement with those reports? You were cited quite often through the report.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I was part of the report. I have been for the last couple of years, and I'm happy to talk to sort of the secondary market as well as the primary market. And we've certainly found that offering consumers the ability to resell their ticket from the very first moment of announcing that as part of your on-sale strategy has actually helped give consumers a bit more confidence in purchasing tickets from the get-go. So thinking through the lens of the primary ticketing, that's key for us. We want people to purchase, and we want people ideally to hold on to their tickets, but if for whatever reason they can't make it, the ability to resell seems to be giving people a little bit more confidence as well. So we're integrated with Tixel under the covers, and the reason Tixel, because they're independent, they're fair. They cap the ticket price at 10% above, okay, and the majority of them will sell for a little bit below. So for us, it was about what can we do, why should we do that, and making sure it was fair and transparent. So the integration's complete. The other reason that we looked at it through coming out of COVID was because of the lack of attendance at venues. So a lot of people were thinking, I'd only paid 20 or 30 bucks for a ticket to go and see a band at a live music venue, a small pub. I won't bother going. What I'll do is I'll just let them keep the money, not realizing from a consumer's perspective that not turning up to a venue has an impact on the operational revenue for those venues. So for us, Tixel is really important, and we continue to support the resale, which is great. Yeah, it's been very, very good for us, and continues to be good for us. And I think more and more promoters that we deal with are realizing that it's not just a last minute thing. You need to inject Tixel from the get-go, give people the confidence from the very start.
That's great. And Ben, maybe you might want to kind of give us a brief look at the whole bigger picture, what's been happening culturally, what are some of those cultural shifts around ticket buying, what's some of the research saying, maybe talk about the LPA report, among others.
Yeah, thanks, Ant. That's a great place to start. So Live Performance Australia put out their annual report of attendance and revenue based on ticketed events across all forms of live performance in Australia each year. And they include a section on contemporary music. And so that's where ticket sales is really one of the ways we can get a read on what's going on out there, how many people are going to things and what they're spending on it. And one of the stories that tells is that in the most recent report, 2023, thanks for linking that there, we hit an all-time high of attendance and revenue. In fact, the revenue's up 50% from the previous pre-COVID peak. It's $1.5 billion a year. But there's some interesting features within that when you dig in deeper. So the revenue went up about 3 times as much as the attendance did. What does that mean? That means the average ticket price went up. Again, hit an all-time high. It was $128 that year, 2023. And what that really reflects is the number of those, big expensive events, your stadium concerts, where there are those multi-levels of tickets and people could be spending quite a bit. And so that's where you start to get this picture, as I put it, that there's the growth that we see in live music is a bit top heavy. Because then you look at the other factors like Seth mentioned, which is great to bring up, which is smaller venues is where we've got some numbers on some struggles there. So, for example, APRA keeps track of the licensed venues in the country, and we're still down about 25% from the pre-COVID level, over 1,000 venues down from where we were all up. And a lot of that's in the small to medium range. The other bits of research that have come out in recent years, which is really welcome, is audience research, because we all wonder what are people thinking, what's driving people's behaviour. And so some of the things that have come out have included very recently, just in April, was Music Australia released their listening in report based on national surveys and also compiling various other bits of research that are out there about music audiences. And that confirms these things we've been talking about and that people thought were happening, which is people buying their tickets later, people delaying their purchase, which is an issue, especially for certain types of event like festivals that need that early capital, and the just traditional wisdom that you're supposed to sell big on your opening of sales. That kind of culture is changing.
And
So
I
that's
guess
one of the things.
potentially
Yeah.
festivals like Splendor and Groove in the Mood that were impacted so forcefully because of exactly that. They didn't have the expected ticket sales, so the cash flow wasn't there, and so they cancelled early.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
no,
great.
that's right. And then some of this research asks people, well, what are your barriers? Because one of the things I like to highlight is all of these surveys show people are saying music is important to me. I would like to attend more live music. And those things are actually stronger than pre-COVID, stronger than ever. People are agreeing with those statements. So they want to go. And when it comes to barriers, as you might expect, things like cost and cost of living is the number one, especially for the younger age groups. So all of those things, I think, give us the context and sort of paint the picture and maybe confirm things we know and add a bit of nuance around it too.
And I will come to you in a second, Ellie, but just to stick with you, Ben and Seth, perhaps who owns the ticket companies in Australia? Who's independent? Who's owned multinationally? How does it work? And how does a company like Oztix do deals with various festivals, etc., to sell tickets on a specific basis with those festivals or venues?
Sure. Okay. Well, there's obviously a lot to say there, but one of the things, and I guess this aligns with that idea I was saying, where I would describe sort of growth in recent times as top heavy. One of the patterns of recent years has been, I guess, the consolidation of various parts of the industry, or it's also called vertical integration, into big corporate groups. So one that's got a lot of attention in recent years in particular is the Live Nation group. And within that, there's everything from venues to booking agencies to ticketing agencies that are within that group. And so there's down the chain of the live music business, there's this sort of consolidation of ownership, and that's happening around the world. But that's something that and the way that they say it is, well, you need that size and scale to be able to do those big events. We're the only ones that can do it at that sort of scale. I mean, that's one of the things that gets said. But the fact is that there is this consolidation there. Oztix being independent of that, just to be clear. And so, look, that's one of the concerns, I guess, when we look at live music as an ecosystem is, well, what are the structures? What are the structures of power and control here? And that's where you get some concerns about some of the, I guess, consumer fairness and business fairness issues. One of the things that came up last year that got a lot of attention, for example, you mentioned it and maybe we'll get to it later, is the dynamic pricing or surge pricing around some of the big tours like Oasis internationally and Green Day in Australia. And that seemed to get a bit of a consumer backlash and a lot of media attention that coincided with this concern about the business structures here. And so that sort of brought out a lot of these things in the background that a lot of your average punters might not usually think about. But those things have come out and become part of the discussion now. And I know it's something that the ALMBC, definitely is concerned with and works with.
Yes, and just to stick with that for 1 second, the dynamic pricing and surge pricing. So in October last year, the federal government of the time, the Labor government, announced that they were going to ban that, specifically banning surge pricing and investigating, transparency around ticketing through a number of areas, not just live music, but across all kinds of activities such as gym subscriptions and all kinds of things. Since we've been liaising with the federal government post the election, and they said that things are on the way. They haven't said what or when, but we are hopeful that there will be action. And you might have seen in the news this morning, there were issues around the ticketing of the cricket yesterday, and that made me think that in Australia you can't muck around with tickets for cricket. So maybe that'll push that forward in the minds of our government as well. With surge pricing and dynamic pricing, is it just the big players that are doing that? Does Oztix do that, Seth?
No, look, we don't. We're about transparency. Consumers are obviously very frustrated by costs. As you mentioned, the Parliamentary Committee are looking into that in terms of what's happening from a dynamic pricing perspective. But also, I think it's important to really look at how we improve transparency and limiting those sort of extreme price variabilities. We're absolutely supportive of that. So we believe in clear upfront pricing. So not just because it's fair, but it's about building trust and long-term loyalty with the consumers. So we know the value that live entertainment adds to the economy, and we need to continually nurture and grow the amount of people that are actually engaging and buying tickets and going out to events. So we're very, very price conscious. So for us, it's a very simple booking fee, which is a per ticket fee that can range anywhere from 50 cents to $5. And then there's a handling fee applied to that, and that's passed on to the consumer at the time of purchase. That's our model. That's how it works. That's how it's always worked for the last 21 years. Whether it's future-proof, well, who knows? But it is fair and it's equitable.
That's great. And the ALMBC works very closely with multinationally owned companies as well, have strong partnerships in place, particularly around the push for the new arena ticket levy, which we can talk about later. So we're not here to just bash multinationals, but we are clear that if something's not in the benefit of Australian audiences or Australian artists, then the ALMBC is just one of those organisations that's going to keep talking about that. And as you mentioned there, you mentioned the parliamentary report into live music. There were the first 4 recommendations. Recommendation 2 was about Australian consumer law being amended to better regulate the selling of tickets. So to me, if that's the second recommendation, that means that committee felt that was the second most important issue. Then they said also to monitor the Australian music industry for anti-competitive conduct and take enforcement action as required. And then recommendation 4 was about the setting up of a levy, an arena ticket levy. So, backing up what you said, Seth, that the live music parliamentary report definitely backs those kinds of issues, not just for Australian audiences, but also for artists and venues and festivals and all kinds of live music businesses. Okay, what we might jump into already, Ellie, is looking at what's happening now. What's the go now in terms of new technology, and take us through some of your research and your investigative deep dives into the dark world of blockchain, and what's happening now, and what are we looking at in the future?
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, the blockchain is the obvious technology for the issues that we're talking about. And to make that case, I'm not one of those people that say blockchain solves this, but it is actually good for some things, believe it or not.
What actually is it?
Okay, so what we have is, I would say, an ability to establish common knowledge. That's what a blockchain enables. And it does that without needing a central firm or government in control that is telling you that something is the way it is and you have to trust it. So essentially, because you have many, many nodes in a healthy public blockchain, that are all running the same software and ledger and reaching agreement on not just the transactions that are in there, but importantly, the order of those transactions, which establishes who owns what, then you have the ability for everybody to know at one point the state of that ledger. So ticketing is essentially a property right. It's a right to entry or to a certain seat or whatever it is. And this is what blockchains are good for. So it's actually no surprise that there have been many experiments with ticketing and blockchain during what's called the ICO era of 2017, before regulators started cracking down on securities law in relation to blockchain startups. There were a number of startups who were offering blockchain ticketing, and some of them got off the ground. And so all essentially that is doing is showing those transactions in a transparent way. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you need a crypto wallet to hold that particular ticket or NFT, or however they're choosing to do it. It can just be that they are sending you a QR code to an email address or however, and then that is pinging an API to the blockchain to check if it's authentic. So there, some of the early usability issues got solved pretty quickly. But at the same time, we've seen some interesting, I think, quite successful examples in certain areas, but obviously it hasn't transformed the industry because of all the problems that all of you have been talking about. It hasn't transformed the industry in a big way yet. And
do you
so
think
for
there
me,
is companies now that are using blockchain or other forms of technology like that?
Yeah, certainly. And so one of the examples called Guts from the Netherlands looks really interesting. So these are essentially platforms where if you're running an event, you can go and create the tickets for it, and you can set parameters around how that's used, because aside from providing the common knowledge dimension that we all require for a functioning economy, blockchains also enable automation through smart contracts. So essentially automated agreements that say if this event occurs, then this software will automatically go through a certain process and execute a certain function. And so in the case of blockchain, that can be, I'm going to create tickets and I'm going to specify a price cap, or that if this ticket is resold, it can only be resold for such and such percentage above what it was originally purchased for, or none at all. You might have a whole lot of other functions in there. You might provide whoever holds that ticket a certain VIP status that will give them entry into a particular area to meet artists or whatever it might be. And you could also, of course, add a tax or levy to the ticket and send it to another smart contract that would enable those funds to be redistributed, which we can talk about later in relation to some of the current industry suggestions and questions out there. So it's a very useful technology in that respect, and some of the original barriers around, say, the price of gas fees or transaction costs that are attached to it have been solved through both what's called layer 2 technologies and new wallet upgrades to particular platforms. So yes, it can do many things, and it can do things which are extremely useful. So that that one I mentioned in the Netherlands, Guts, you can go in there and you can specify all of these dimensions that you might want associated with your ticket. And you can also see it on the blockchain. And when I say the blockchain, I think that one's particularly interesting because it is a protocol that they are now running on multiple different blockchains. So they're running it on Solana, they're running it on Polygon, they're running it on Base. So it's not associated with a particular blockchain platform, and it has all kinds of interoperability, which you would also want if you were someone running a ticketing company or trying to administer tickets. You don't want to restrict your users to people who are just using a particular blockchain. I mean, if you want to share that link I provided, and might be useful for people to see what that even looks like on chain.
And that's
because
the explore.onopen.
Yeah, let's try it out. So this is not showing the ticket. This is showing what it looks like on chain. So if you want to check that your ticket is authentic, if you want to know the status of it, I have very little knowledge of this particular group or this particular protocol. I noticed that it is backed by Anna Monica Brands and some other huge VCs, so I would expect it has good investment. So that's not showing the blockchain itself, that one. If you go up to the, oh yeah, okay, go to random. See where it says random? Click on random there, Ant. So this is just going to randomly find a ticket for us.
Amazing.
Let's see which one we get. So you could put your own ticket in there and do your own little audit and see if it's
so
real.
When you say your own ticket, yeah, what do you mean? A ticket you've purchased off any provider? Or
off this provider, off Guts in this case, off the one from the Netherlands, or other. So my understanding is with this particular protocol, Open, it's not just Guts. They've essentially created a platform that other ticketing companies can use, so that you're all so that the back end is already there. I don't know why it's not working for you. It was working for me fine before.
It's probably not because we've got
it's probably the
session
Qantas
happening.
Club. Yeah.
The Virgin, yes.
The Virgin Airlines Club. So anyway,
right. Yeah.
But what I mean, we'll wait and see. Maybe just refresh, see if it works. Yeah. If it doesn't, it's not a big deal. The what you would see with this is essentially a few details around the particular token ID. Here we go. We can see this one was sold for $25.83, and it's issued by something or other. It's been one interaction there. This was quite recently. It was in 2025 when I was playing around with this. I was getting some from 2024, and I think even earlier. So it's and it's showing you the blockchain that this ticket was created on down the bottom there, which is Polygon. Anyway, so it's just what it's doing here is providing some of the transparency that you might want. So we certainly would trust a large company like Oztix to not be ripping us off. We don't know if there's some kind of fraudster out there replicating their tickets and doing things that we don't want, and we're buying something that's fake. So you might want to use that for that particular purpose.
And so really that would enable kind of full transparency. You can tell who's got the ticket, where they've bought it from, how much they've paid for it, exactly what kind of markup fee there was, everything about that ticket. Yeah.
Yeah, but amazing. What I would say, and it's probably very useful for venues and artists who are creating their own tickets and putting them out there. I mean, there are other examples which were more related to NFTs during the NFT craze, which I thought was super interesting because you get a memento of the event as well, the kind of ticket stub that has sentimental value, if not any actual financial value. I think in sports, that's been really big.
Tell us quickly about that. And there was a problem with NFTs around Coachella, if you can tell us quickly about that.
Yeah, sure. So that was Ticketmaster, and Ticketmaster was actually one of the big companies that acquired an early blockchain startup. But see, if they used it, they only used it in their back end. They didn't use it in the way that I was just showing. But then they went ahead and for Coachella, they created a limited set. I think it was 10 NFTs for lifetime entry into the event. And they sold them, I think, for I think it was 1.4 mil was raised through that. And it was, I think, quite popular and certainly received a lot of press. But they did it on the FTX exchange and its platform, which was the one that notoriously Sam Bankman-Fried ran away with all the customers' assets and has now been locked up in prison, which is a kind of very, well, not uncommon and problematic thing in this particular industry. And what that says to me is that FTX was still a centralized company, and they were not necessarily being transparent or doing things that where the particular owner of that NFT held the keys themselves. FTX still held the keys in custody for the owner of the NFT. So since then, they've reissued them, and they're now on OpenSea, and they are, from my understanding, now legitimate NFTs. But yeah, there are always those kinds of issues when it comes to blockchain and blockchain companies. You need to know that what you're dealing with is legit, but also it does have those risks for the consumer around holding the key. And otherwise, if you don't want to do that, if you just want to give them a QR code, there is still some kind of trusted intermediary relationship occurring there, even if you have all that transparency and auditability in the background. But as I said, wallets are getting better. The new upgrades that are happening are going to make it possible to send a blockchain ticket to your Apple wallet and have more of these assurances in place. So yeah, it has been problematic. I'd like to think that it's being resolved.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Ellie. And that's to me, that's all mind-blowing, and I'm sure some of the people on the call here have their heads totally around it, but I can't wait to see all of that kind of appear in the next few years as well. Might just jump back around transparency.
Actually,
oh, yeah.
Sorry,
yeah.
Before we do, I do just want to make one point in all of this, because when I say blockchain doesn't solve it, most of my research has actually been more in the royalties area with music. And we've seen issues there where even though the technology makes sense, it's very complicated. But I think also the kinds of vertical structures that Ben was talking about, this doesn't solve that. If those relationships are there, and if there are companies that have massive power within an industry, unless they're made by government to, say, use these platforms and apply these levies or caps or whatever it might be, it's not going to be used in a way that solves any of those problems. All it will do is provide them with efficiencies in the background and make their profits higher. So the issue actually on the table is industry cooperation.
Which is amazing, and I guess the ALMBC is all about industry cooperation, and that's a major focus of ours. We do have an issue with vertical integration, and it's not just us. So in last year, we saw in the US, the Justice Department said that they were going to sue Live Nation about vertical integration. We've seen just in the last few weeks, Richard Grenell, I don't know how to pronounce his name, but he's a Trump ally, come onto the Live Nation board. So in the US, so it'll be interesting to see what happens there around that action that the US Justice Department are taking, and whether that kind of quietly disappears.
I might there's a point I could make there, and if it's
Go,
useful, because I thought about it before, so now here's my second chance. And this is that idea of market power. So it's not in Australian law, you're allowed to have massive market power. There's no such thing as too big. In the US, as I understand it, their antitrust law, as it's called, they actually can come at you for being too big. And I think that's one of the things they're doing. Whereas in Australia, the issue is when you have this market power, do you misuse it? And if you misuse that by forcing either the people you're dealing with business-wise or the consumer, if you're forcing them into something unfair by using that massive power that you have, that's the issue that our ACCC and so forth look at. And that ticketing issue that came up last year, that surge pricing, the ticket price changing between logging in and actually getting to the point of sale, those sorts of things, that's where that comes up. Is this a misuse? And that's the question which they've been pursuing that line in the UK, and so that's the sort of consideration here. I just thought it might be useful to delineate that. Yeah.
absolutely. And Seth, you might want to just buy out of that, but you're very welcome to make a comment as well.
Oh, look, it's it's transparency is everything. I think we always put ourselves in the seat of the consumer, which is if I've got an emotional connection with live entertainment, which generally is what happens, people have these fantastic live connections with either music or sport, right? They're very passionate about it. So when those emotions are running high and they're wanting to engage in a live experience with either of those two verticals in particular, and then they see an advertised price for a ticket, and by the time they get through the cart to make the purchase, it's out of control. It really does upset, obviously the consumer, but also it upsets that sort of symbiotic balance that we're trying to keep with the consumer and the promoter, or the consumer and the venue. It's got to be nurtured. So I'm all for that transparency. It has to be there. ACCC do a good job of keeping people honest there, but we absolutely need regulation. We're an unregulated industry. We are a very big industry, and we're unfortunately or fortunately, whichever side of the coin you're looking at, it's a global industry. We need the global side of things from a touring perspective, without a doubt. We have Australian consumers that are very, very actively engaged and wanting to see the Taylor Swifts of the worlds and the Blink-182s and whatnot, which is great. Bring them all over. No problems with that whatsoever, but we've got to do it in a fair and transparent way. And I think that's where people are really starting to get the ick with us. And from a ticketing perspective, unfortunately, we are probably the ones that get pushed under the bus a lot, because you'll see a ticket price, and that ticket price doesn't necessarily, that booking fee may not necessarily reflect the other commercial arrangements that are sitting inside that as well. Okay, so there's a booking fee with a revenue share in there generally. But when you're talking about, double, triple dipping, venues paying an inside charge, promoters paying, you're being charged, venues being charged, consumers being double charged, service fees, all sorts. It's confusing. I've been doing this for 15 years and I'm confused when I see some of these fee structures. I just can't believe it myself. The Four Corners expose, if you like, was eye-opening from my perspective as well. So I think it's important that we continue to consider the consumer. It's got to be consumer-centric, everything we do here, transparent and honest.
And I guess for the artist as well. So I guess that's a point that the ALMBC keeps making, is anything that's a barrier to purchasing tickets and getting people to gigs or getting people to festivals, we've just got to get rid of those barriers. And if people are getting frustrated in the ticketing process, that is a major issue, and one that the ALMBC will be kind of pushing hard for. Ellie, you just put up a link in the chat there. Do you want to mention that? And just to flag again, if anyone has any questions, please put them in the chat or put your hand up, and we're very happy to go to you and let you ask a question as well.
I just put up one from Sports Illustrated, weirdly, which is similar to the Guts one that I mentioned. I just thought that their explanation on their website was very clear about what they do and what they offer, and the ability to kind of add these, fan benefits. to whatever it is that you're creating, in addition to the kind of transparency affordances. So yeah, but there are plenty of other examples. Struggling to find ones in Australia. So there was something called Ticket Fairy, but I was confused as to how much it was blockchain backend. I'm curious as to whether other people here know of successful Australian examples. There seemed to be one in the performing arts, possibly. Yeah. But I should say Australia is not a great regulatory environment for blockchain these days. Many of the founders that I knew through the Web3 meetups that we ran at RMIT have actually gone overseas to become super successful. So that's disappointing. And as I said before, I think if you want to get some kind of industry coordination that involves government, you also probably want them to be on board with the technologies that you're using. So in the humanitarian sector work I was doing, that was an issue where even though we had Red Cross and Engineers Without Borders and Oxfam and all, like many interesting humanitarian organizations keen to use blockchain for trusted credentials, say, showing that you have a particular ability in child safety or something like that, a child safety credential, and to be able to share that between the organizations. In the end, it's the government that's auditing them that is not requiring that or is not open to it or whatever. So, this was a few years ago now, perhaps it's changed. But again, it's just something you need to be aware of in terms of these broader whole of industry initiatives, as opposed to just small players trying to do something as a startup, which is, I don't know how far that's going to get you.
Do you think there is an opportunity either for an existing player to grab hold of blockchain and make something happen, or for a new entity to kick in and, take a chunk of the market using blockchain technology in Australia?
Yeah, a report that, interestingly, we did at RMIT for Australia Council, Screen Australia, and a bunch of other creative industries orgs in 2019 argued for what we were calling an industry utility platform for the creative industries, so that you would be able to have I suppose, at least some kind of standards and specifications that enable you to see and work collaboratively together. That didn't go anywhere. It was titled a provocation paper for a reason. But
I've never seen that. I would love to see that.
Yeah, I'll add some links. There was also a follow-up one we did in 2020, into 2022, I think, which was more around NFTs, in fact. And so that might be useful for the live music questions as well. But I think an industry can certainly do this themselves, and it's not probably technologically difficult to do it all anymore. It's getting people around the table, and I would say that the approach that you need to take would be this kind of focus on standards and what it is that you're agreeing to implement and how that's going to be recorded. And for instance, also if it was about redistributing, which this technology is very good for, so say taking something off the top of those big venue ticket sales and sending it to small
like an arena
venues.
ticket levy. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. You can automate that using this technology, and you can do some amazing grants through this as well. So the Web3 grant field has certainly become, I would say, pretty advanced compared to, I was on a grant giving body, the Community Broadcasting Foundation, for 9 years, and it's a pretty intense committee process of people meeting face to face and assessing grants, etc. I think for the kinds of things that your industry is looking at, there would be ways of automating and making these much more lightweight processes if you have the will to use these technologies in the first place. Yeah,
that is amazing. I do have to get my kids to show me the remote control, how that works, but I'm totally into this, Ellie. Um, Now, for each of you, and even anyone else, talking about what you're doing now or in the coming up in the future, any kind of forward plans in terms of transparency, in terms of pushing forward, undertaking new kind of cultural opportunities in live music, or you know, research that you have coming up, then, etc.
I mean, I'll jump in just from from a ticketing perspective with Oztix. As I said, I think we've cracked the fair and transparency thing, and we'll continue along that path. But for us, it's about what technologies can we leverage to better sell the inventory that we have, because fundamentally we're a for-profit business. We make money when we sell tickets, but we're like a fruit store that has the most amazing bananas. They're going to last on that shelf for 3 days, but once they're brown, they're off. They're in the skip out the back. So it's the same with us with our events. So we need to perform. We get paid on performance. So for us, it's about understanding, how do we get that further 1% ticket sale, the 2%, just that marginal sort of growth. And that also then in turn, of course, helps support the artists, because artists get paid out of the tickets as well. Okay. And then, of course, it feeds the ecosystem of venues, et cetera, et cetera. So some of the stuff we're looking at, obviously, at the moment is a lot of generative sort of AI. How do we help our event organizers better leverage that from an event build perspective to help streamline that process to get events on sale with as least friction as possible and as quickly as possible, but also looking at it from a sort of machine learning and predictive perspective as well, which is, we've been operating for 22 years. We've got nearly 7 million people on our customer database nationally. So you would think that we could overlay some of the historical data we have against a future event that fits a certain shape, that may give us some sort of indications. If this event is taking place in a regional market within a 50-kilometer radius of a metro city, and it's an R&B event, then history should suggest this is where it might look at. And we've done some early modeling on that, actually, and it's starting to shape up really well, which is going to help the event promoters, those that essentially own the ticketing rights, make some more informed decisions about what they're doing, and also inform them about price, because that's what we're talking about here, right? Which is that people aren't buying tickets because they're too expensive and they're getting hit with fees they just don't know are coming. So if we can just tweak it slightly to give them the best price point, I think we're all going to win out of that.
I'm sure AI can impact all of everything you're doing there positively as well, make all of that easier and quicker. Ben, any comments on any of that?
Yeah. Look, just the thing that, as someone coming at this as a social and cultural researcher, is that difference between there being the technological ability to do something and there being the social acceptance or the demand for that technology. And the thing I think of is, we've seen that where PayWave, contactless credit card payment, was around since I think the 2000s. QR codes were around since maybe the 90s, but it took COVID for those things to become the norm, which they now are. They're now the norm, and they have effects on things like, I think of at the smallest level of small venue. I think that the $10 barrier finally got broken for the $10 door charge at a small gig during that period, because we moved away from notes and we moved to the contactless. But they're examples of how, it depends on the social conditions. And I think this thing we keep coming back to of confidence, and that's the issue, a big issue that we have is that consumer confidence. And so, it's interesting how that's the thing that needs to be addressed through technology and through all these other things too. But the demand is there. And one of the things you see, for example, with, recently small venues in trouble, they put a call out to the public saying, will you donate to help us? And people do. So people are willing to put money in to support the system that they love, the live music they want to see. It's a question of how to harness that.
Yeah, I think you want to say something else.
Oh, look, it's just further to what you just said there, Ben. It's incredibly important to not forget the grassroots venues. We've got the stadia, and there's this massive flux of content. Some may say an oversupply at the moment with the big ticket prices that are pushing down. But without these live entertainment spaces for artists to start and start their journey, we won't have those. So we've got to really be mindful of that. 1/3 of all of the live music venues that were here pre-COVID are now gone, and they're continuing to go by the wayside, and that's a sorry state of affairs. So we've got to continue to maintain focus and energy around supporting the smaller venues as well.
Wonderful. We've got a question from Kat Nalligan about advice on how to protect digital tickets from hackers or theft, as this is becoming a fear for consumers. Ellie, do you have any answers for that?
It's a good question, and the issue is that it's specific to how the tickets would be administered. If they're hacking into your email, for instance, and stealing a QR code, then that the thing with blockchains is you get security through you owning the private key, so that only you showing the ability to prove that you own the asset enables you to transfer it. And it's only if that gets hacked does it get stolen. But you don't really want to go down that path with something like ticketing. But there are various, as I've mentioned a few times, various new wallet functionalities coming out. So it's not just you that's holding that key, it's actually distributed through different parties, for instance. So there are kind of different ways at the back end that you can make things more secure. It's a very difficult question to answer because I'm not sure what's being hacked. If it's your platform that's being hacked, then you've got some serious OPSEC to attend to. But something on a blockchain it's not the blockchain that is hacked. It's typically an exchange or an intermediary or something that's administering that's hacked. So yeah, I get the concern, but I don't have a straightforward answer. Sorry.
And hopefully in the future that kind of danger is less likely to happen with this kind of automation and transparency around ticketing.
So the thing I wanted to raise in relation to AI, though, which I think is kind of interesting. So in the blockchain world, there's lots of discussions at the moment more around defensive AI. So the notion that you're creating AIs which are defending against other AIs. So and able to spot them and the rest of it. And I think that is probably where some of this will head, because it won't just be you that's purchasing your ticket, it will be your AI agent. This is the do it for me economy, it's called. And so I think that is going to present massive challenges, but maybe also some new solutions around formal rules and specifications around how an AI can behave or not behave, which might help defend against existing problems around bots and in purchasing and stuff too. Yeah, sorry. Sometimes I feel like I'm just making stuff up, but it's this is what the technologists I speak to talk about.
It's huge. It's an amazing big future that we're running towards blindly. I love it. But we're going to finish up there, and I just want to say thank you so much to our three amazing speakers. Really appreciate your integrity and openness and enthusiasm and expertise on all of this. And thank you to everyone who's come along as well. Good on you, Kat. Thanks for the little clap there. Coming up, the ALMBC, as I mentioned, I'm off to Townsville. We've got a session in Townsville tomorrow. And being in regional Australia is really vital for us, engaging with members. We'll be in Cairns at the end of the month as well. And our next online session like this is going to be around hearing for live music workers, which is a big issue as well. We're just getting the partnerships together for that, but that'll be in July. And if you're coming to the AIR Awards or IndieCon in Adelaide at the end of July. We'll be having a breakfast on the Friday morning following the awards. So we'll see you there as well. So thank you once again to everybody. Really appreciate you coming along and being part of this, and we'll see you all very, very soon.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Anne.
Thanks very
Thank you.
much. Thanks, Anne.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.